How's it going? I'm IlaGolden and welcome to my vlog. Alright, okay, so on this one we are going to be talking about child characters, specifically how I choose to write child characters. This could be interesting. um, Well, unlike my dear friend Jade, who loves her child characters and definitely writes child characters when she does child characters, I'm not a sort of huge fan of writing child characters in general. That's not to say that I don't write child characters and I don't like the child characters that I do write, but I like all my characters to sort of play their role within the story, so that does kind of reflect a lot with my child characters, I think. So I want to sort of talk about a few specific examples of my child characters to sort of give you guys kind of an idea of what I mean when I say I've got like my own way of dealing with child characters. um, so um, as I said, I'm going to use a couple of examples, and the first example I'm going to use is, of course, from the Tales, because where else would I begin this journey? So there are a few child characters in the Tales. They don't all necessarily stay child characters for very long in terms of when you reach the second half of the Tales saga, the Next Generation stuff, they sort of jump up in age until they're sort of teenagers, and I count teenage characters and child characters slightly differently anyway. So when I'm saying child characters, I do mean characters under the age of about 13 in general. I kind of know a bit more what I'm doing once they're sort of 13 plus, but like before that age, not so much. So the ones you do kind of get is in like the first half of the Tale Saga. You get Crowval, and you get Joe, um, and they are both superpowered, super genius children. And Crowval in particular, who does get a lot of characterization, even though he is less than two by the time the first part of the Tale Saga, the original eight books are sort of finished. Even though he's sort of like less than two by that point, he has such a little character to him and such a little personality to him, and he's not a stupid baby by any means. When I say he's highly intelligent, he's highly intelligent. I mean, you even to the point where I can sort of do like his own internal monologue where he is frustrated by the limitations of his own physical body, that his physical body is not developing as fast as his mind and as fast as his powers are, and he finds lots of different little ways of communicating with certain characters. And yeah, it's fun whenever I sort of read the Crowell stuff, the baby Crowell stuff. It's fun, and you can sort of see his what will eventually become his teenage persona. Definitely there. Definitely sort of on its way to being what he will become. Just because that's how he is, and yeah. I definitely had a lot of fun with him, and I said, Joe, not quite so much. She doesn't get quite as much sort of focus, but she does sort of show she's as intelligent as Crowell is, but being more willing to sort of at least try to enjoy their childhood as children. I think that's sort of the distinct differences between their personalities. Is Crowell is in this absolute rush towards his final state, his adult state, as it were. Whereas I think Joe has always been much more willing to sort of let things sort of ride and let them grow up properly rather than try to rush through it. Although again, you do get sort of hints that there is more to that than that in various sort of ways you sort of see her as a teenager, because both of them you see two versions of them as a teenager, but I won't spoil why you see two versions of them as a teenager. Go read the tales if you want to find out why you see two versions of them as a teenager. It's quite good. but you definitely get a good indication that, you know, she very much appreciates her childhood in a way that Crowell doesn't, and appreciates her innocence in a way that Crowell doesn't, and that is kind of how their personalities are sort of similar but different, and how it sort of reflects each other. And obviously later on, sort of the ninth book of the Tales, when you get the leap forward, you then get this whole host of other children, of other child characters. Everybody breeds a lot. In between book 8 and book 9, everybody breeds a whole lot. And I think of them, my sort of, again, Crowell and Joe are sort of, you know, in their early teens at this point, but Lus, Arados, and Taylor, who kind of take the focus of book 9, again, they have very distinct personalities. I mean, they're all, I think, 11-ish, from what I remember, at that sort of point, and they do have their own very distinct little personalities, and they are troublemakers, and they are, you know, they're fun to write for because they've all got their own little baggage, you know, that is understandable for their age and where they've come from, and you know, the situation that's led them to the point where they are. They are troublemakers, and again, you can sort of see when the next leap forward sort of happens, and you know, they become, you know, settled down a little bit, and the cheekiness and the energy that they kind of have does sort of carry forward. And I think when I'm writing child characters, especially child characters I know that I may grow up at some point, I like to sort of see how they are as like a more developed product, and like, because I think you do carry traits through from childhood. Not, you know, you're not the same person you are as when you were a child, and I don't think I do that with any of my characters. I don't think when I grow them up, I don't keep them exactly as they are as a child, because all their experiences and everything they've been through shapes them and change them, and make them different. But the base is sort of still there. The sort of, you know, the inner core is sort of still there. It's changed and it's adapted, but it's still there. So little quirks and little personality traits sort of can carry through. And the Tales is one of the few times where I've really gotten to explore that, because I've had the opportunity to explore. 15 books, you're going to have the opportunity to explore, you know, the growing up of certain characters. So again, go read the Tales. If you want a good idea of that, go read the Tales. That's, yeah. Just go read the Tales, guys. Every single one. Go read the Tales. That's got to be like my catchphrase on these vlogs now. Go read the Tales. So, in, I guess, vast sort of contrast to the Tale Saga, where my child characters are either like more mature or have these, you know, traits that sort of age them up a little bit. You then have the two child characters in Echo, which are Piccolo and Synth, and again, because I was sort of initially writing this, and very much, I still feel like it is, you know, my gift to Jade. The child characters are much more probably closer to how she would write child characters, and there's nothing wrong with how she writes child characters. She writes really good child characters if child characters are what you're going for. It's usually not what I'm going for when I'm writing. So Piccolo's sort of moodiness and temper tantrums, well, sort of temper tantrums, and Synth's sort of very innocent, very poorly worded way of saying things, and his sort of energy, they are children. They are child characters that are actually children. And they don't feature quite as heavily in Echo as I'm sure Jade would have liked. In fact, when I actually came to the end of writing it, she did want me to write a sequel that focused much more heavily on the two children characters, and I was just like, no. No, I you know, as much as I enjoyed the characters and, you know, writing that whole story, I'm not the type of person who can go, yes, I really love these children characters, therefore I'm going to write my next story specifically about these children characters. it's not really how my brain kind of does it. You know, some of the adult characters maybe might have persuaded me to write a sequel, but I don't think there's a sequel there. So that doesn't help to begin with. But no, very much. They are child characters who are actually children and are actually allowed to be children and react to the situations like a child would react to the situations, and you know their motivations and everything. It's very easy to sort of see where they've come from and how they've kind of gotten to be in that state, because it's semi normal. And yes, I'm trying to say semi normal about fantasy characters who are, you know, enchanted breeds and stuff like that. But yeah, it is sort of like transferring or transposing, you know, a very ordinary situation or semi-ordinary situation into these children characters. So it does contrast quite vastly from what I would usually do and what I would usually write. That's, as I said, not to say that I don't like the characters. I do like the characters. I did enjoy writing Echo and all the characters in Echo. It's just I don't usually write children characters like that. Usually they are a bit more rambunctious and headstrong and borderline insane or evil, depending on the story. Which brings me nicely onto the last example that I want to sort of use, which is from the Realms and Reality series, which the first book is technically out, and that's the one. That's the one that I basically was priced out of the market, which is a shame because it's an amazing series. I mean, I need to still go through it and sort of tidy it up and stuff, but yeah, at some point I want to definitely get that series sort of up and running again. But anyway, a particular child character in Realms and Reality, you meet just before the halfway point, I think. He is called Samuel, and he is insane. He is 11, I believe. I'm remembering that right. Um, but because of all the very very questionable stuff that has gone on, both in terms of his family and his own personal history, he is not sane, and I'm not just sort of saying that. He really isn't. When you sort of first encounter him, um, he has cleared out pretty much all the citizens from the village or town that he is supposed to be the leader of. I can't quite remember what the exact context of his role within the community is. But he's cleared them all out. In order to literally just set fire to all the buildings on a whim whenever he wants. He's a total pyromaniac. And it's also suggested that he is anorexic as well, which, you know, I'm not saying that anorexics are insane. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that this character happens to be insane and also happens to suffer from an eating disorder. Those are two completely unrelated things. Please don't think that I'm saying they are connected. They are not. They're two completely unrelated things. But I literally, with him, kind of went, well, how bad can I make this? What things can I throw at this character to really push the limits of the situation, kind of explain how he ends up at the point he ends up at by the end of the series, and yeah. I'm not sure there needs to be B. I think he's one of those characters that it sort of came in as kind of a antagonist sort of character, or at least more towards the antagonistic side, and he very much ends up on the side of the antagonists by the end of the series. But he from the beginning, even like the other characters are very very aware that there is something not right within him. And as I said, it's a mixture of all the things that he's sort of been through sort of before that point. And I like writing child characters like that. I like writing child characters where it's kind of the same for anybody who's seen the vlog on Echo. It's kind of the same thing that my same way of thinking when I was approaching her, which is, would I do this to any other character? Yes, let's do it. Would I do this to any other character? No, let's still do it. I approach all my characters like that. I don't feel like I shouldn't do something to a particular character just because they are a particular thing. And child characters in my writing don't get that exception very often either. I mean, obviously, moralistically, there are certain things that I prefer not to fully cross with child characters in particular. But in terms of how much torture I can put them through, yeah, I like torturing my characters. It doesn't matter how old they are. That's really, really rather terrible of me, and I am fully aware that it is rather terrible of me. But that is the way it goes sometimes. Anyway, I hope this has given you guys some idea of how I, in particular, approach child characters. I don't think there's anything wrong with writing child characters in stories. I think everybody has their own way of writing child characters in stories, and I think, if it's the way that works for you, that's great. My particular way is to I want them to be treated like, pretty much like any other character within my story. So the limitations of what I will do and what I can do with child characters is meh. So yeah. All right. Okay. I think I've gotten across everything I want to. It's all good. Right. So next time we're going to be talking about birthdays. Yeah. So next time we are going to be talking about birthdays. The next vlog is the first one in March, and the first one in March is going to be about birthdays. There's no particular reason whatsoever for that. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. I hope you guys are looking forward to the next one, and I will see you next time. See ya. If you've enjoyed this video, feel free to check out some of my others, and if you like what you see, please like and subscribe. See ya!